Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Today I'm going to, oh, by the way, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Chet. I am the CEO of Avion Technology. We are a digital agency based out of Arlington Heights, which is close to Chicago. We work essentially in three different silos. We work, um, we take ideas from entrepreneurs and help them go to market. And once they go to market, we help them scale up and then even have an exit. So we do product development, right? The second area that we work in is we do digital marketing for small businesses, helping them grow. And the third thing we do is actually we work with a lot of digital agencies as their white label programming partner. So essentially, we are in the business of helping other businesses grow, right? That's what we do for a living. Today's topic, right, is actually something which a lot of my digital agency clients would find very pertinent. It's about how to get to the finish line for your projects. Now, I work with a lot of digital agencies, typically in the $1 to $3 million kind of range. They usually have about 5 to 7, 8 full-time employees. The work kind of ebbs and flows. They have a few good quarters, a few bad quarters. And what happens is that, in the good quarters, when there's a lot of work, typically they cannot find enough staff to onboard. So, times like this, they give me a call and I usually take on the work, the work overflows from them. So I'm kind of very well versed with the problems that a lot of 1 to 5 million kind of digital agencies, the problems that they face. And one of the problems it's the elephant in the room is how do you get a client to sign off on a project, right? How do you get a project to completion? Now our industry, the web development industry, the app development industry, I'll call it the digital industry, right? Just to shorten it. We deal with a very peculiar beast. Unlike a doctor, for example, right? If you go to a doctor, you say, my knees hurt, there's maybe 5 or 10 different things that he will have you do. But usually, he knows what's happening. You have a torn meniscus, or you have an ACL tear, or you've lost lubrication in your knees. There's usually just a couple of usual suspects. In our industry, especially in website or apps, it's made of so many different components. You have your domain name, you have your server, you have your third-party integrations, you have your payment, your payment gateway provider. There's just so many things which go into making a website. Now, many a times you get clients who are cognizant of this fact, but many a times you get clients who insist on perfection from your website, from their project. And these are the clients that end up eating a lot of your bandwidth. So one of the problems that a lot of the smaller agencies face is that usually you'll have maybe 2 or 3 core people, usually a founder and a co-founder, or a spouse working together. One of them does the biz dev, the other one does project management, and then you might have a couple of full-time employees, a couple of marketing folks or copywriters who do your SEO, and then you might have a designer or two, and that's how the world is. The problem with taking on board troublesome clients for a digital agency is that it blocks the entire business's cadence, right? So this client doesn't pay on time, so your cash flows get affected. They usually create a lot of ruckus. So usually the owner or his spouse or his co-founder have to go and deal with this client, placate the client. So that creates lost revenue, because your time that you could have spent and getting new business, now you're spending in dealing with a client who isn't anyways spending a lot of money on you. I have seen that, and the Pareto principle, right? The 80-20 rule applies perfectly for these clients. In your digital agency, you will see that 80% of the problems come from 20% of the clients. And in fact, 80% of your revenue also comes from 20% of your clients. So usually what I do is I ask a lot of agency owners to take a hard look at those 20 clients, those 20% of the clients who are giving you 80% of the problems, and decide if you want them, right? Decide if you want these guys for the long run. Because these guys don't add to your margins. A lot of times, I call these project one night stands where no one is going to get anything meaningful for the long term out of this project. It's just, bang for the buck kind of a deal. So both the parties are essentially interested in just exploiting as much as they can in that one deal. And that kind of augurs very badly for a business relationship, right? So if you're an agency owner, take a look at these 20% of clients who are getting you 80% of your problems. Take a hard look at them and see if you want these guys for the long term, right? Because sometimes firing these guys actually makes a lot more sense. Now, there's some situations in which you want these guys, and I'll tell you those specific situations, right? It's when you're typically starting out, when you don't have a portfolio. I call these projects, essentially portfolio projects, because when you're starting out, you don't have a sample of work, you don't have a body of work, so you're really taking anything and everything on board, irrespective of whether that client actually adds value to your business, whether adds to your margins. But if you are an established agency, you've been around for the last 10-20 years, a client like this who nickels and dimes you for everything, right? You give him a quote, he says that you have to discount it by 25%, so he's already killed your margins. Then he looks at the work, suggests all these out of scope changes, and says that you have to do these changes. And there's a lot of ways they'll do that. Sometimes they'll just bully you into it. Sometimes they will just create some emotional sob story and make you do it. But essentially, what they will do is they'll do a scope creep, right? And they'll make you do that work for free. So not only was this project discounted, now the scope creep has made it an absolutely loss-making project for you. And then on top of that, they don't even pay on time, right? Anytime you send them an invoice, they're usually out of town, or you send them an invoice and they're out on a vacation. You send them an invoice and you get voicemail. So these clients are what I call business killers, right? And take a long, hard look as to whether you want these clients for your business. So now that we've identified what the problem is, how do we get past it? Like I said, the best way, prevention is the best medicine, right? So the best thing really you want to do is not take these clients into your ecosystem. It'll save you a lot of headache. Like I said, you would be wasting a lot of time that you would have spent in growth, that you would have spent in strategy, that you would have spent in doing long-term things. All those, or even doing a workout in the gym, or spending time with your family. You would be spending all that time chasing, making someone happy who's not even ever going to be happy, right? These clients, they're never going to be happy. They want, like I always say, they want to build the Taj Mahal for $10,000. And even if you do manage to do that, they will still say, oh, it's not perfect enough. The dome really isn't the way I wanted it to be. So the first thing you gotta do is you gotta make sure you don't get these clients into your ecosystem. Now, there's another group of clients, who would again make a majority of, or somewhat of a majority of your business. And these are reasonable folks, right? You talk to them, they understand where you're coming from, they understand you're a small business, they know that you need to get paid. But even with these kind of clients, I have seen a lot of times within the digital agency world, there's a little bit of a problem in terms of getting a project to the finish line. There's a simple reason for that. There's really no hard and fast finish line in our business. If you have a house, we know when a house can be considered done. If you buy a car, you know when a car is completely manufactured and it's finished. Unfortunately, in our world, a lot of times a project is always work in progress, right? And what I like to say is that the project is actually, I consider web projects, app projects, digital projects as almost a living being, right? They need to be fed, they need to be clothed, they need a home. So similarly, and all these things, the costs add up. So similarly, your app project needs maintenance. It needs good hosting. You need to, pay your domain name registrar fees so you can keep the domain name. So for most web dev or app dev or digital development projects, there's an ongoing continuous cost that you have to pay to make sure that the project, the app or the website works as it should. So what you want to do is you want to do a couple of things, right? The first thing, and this goes without saying, is you should have a very, very tight functional specification document. This is the document that you've used for coding out the project. This is the document that you use for creating the project's dev plan, right? A very nuanced, very detailed functional specification document, which lays out all the different functionalities of the website, which lays out all the different functionalities of the app. Without this document, you're essentially flying in the dark, right? There is nothing to kind of ring fence your project scope. So the first thing you want to do is you want to create a functional spec. There's two other things which I usually recommend because we are in a visual field. One is, please create, after you've completed the functional spec and you have your client's signature on that, it would be a very good idea to have wireframes, right? Because we are in a visual field, and the first time a client can really see what the project will look like is when you build out the wireframes. And the wireframes also help in kind of nailing down the scope. So definitely have the wireframes. I would also recommend that you build out prototypes. There's a lot of tools for prototyping now. There's Figma, for example. But make sure you also do the prototypes. So when you have the functional spec in place and you have the wireframe of the prototype in place, in essence, you've ring-fenced what the scope of the project will be, right? A benefit of this, even for your client, is that tomorrow, for whatever reason, the client wants to go somewhere else, you can package this as a deliverable and say, good, hey, take this, and the client can go somewhere else. But at least the scope of the project is now nailed. The scope of the project is now fixed. Correct? Then once you have these in place, once you start working, I would definitely recommend having some kind of a change management document. Do not take changes via Skype. Do not take changes via WhatsApp. Do not take changes via phone calls. If the client wants to send you any changes, let it be over a tool like Basecamp or Slack or Asana, where everything is documented. I come from the old school. I still prefer Excel sheets. And usually what I do in those Excel sheets is I create 3 sheets. So anytime the client sends me any changes, I divide that change into, I drop that change into 3 buckets. Whether it's in scope, so there's an Excel sheet that I maintain for that, or it's out of scope, I maintain a bucket for that, or whether it's negotiable. A lot of times client will send you a change and it's not really a change, it's more like a modification, and you're not really sure whether it's in scope or out of scope. But keep an Excel sheet and keep these 3 buckets. That will save you a lot of headache. So have a functional spec, number 1. Number 2, if possible, have wireframes. Number 3, have prototypes. Just doing these 3 will save you a lot of headache. Number 4, have a change management protocol. Even if you use an Excel sheet, it'll be completely fine. I have seen really good project managers run multi-million dollar projects using just Excel sheets. So there are a lot of Excel sheet warriors, and they do a phenomenally good job running projects on Excel sheets. And like I said, just have those three buckets: in scope, out of scope, negotiable. Save you a lot of time. The next thing that we come to, and this is something that you need to discuss with the client upfront when you start the project, is something called as an acceptance metric. What is an acceptance metric? I usually divide all my bugs into three types: severity 1, severity 2, severity 3. An S1 bug is like a 404 error, for example, right? Where, or an app which just crashes, boom. A severity 2 error is an error where the app is not crashing or the page is loading, but the functionality within is not working the way it should, right? That's a S2 error. And a severity 3 error is when it's a cosmetic issue. The CSS is not being loaded properly, or it's a little bit of a JavaScript issue, or the HTML doesn't render properly. So a very cosmetic issue. And I usually tell my clients, I will take care of all these S3 issues at the end once I've migrated the site over to your server. And there's a reason for that, right? We know that a lot of things change, a lot of things break down during migration. So there is it doesn't make sense to do a thing twice, right? So it is always a good idea to take all your S3 issues, compile them, and then wait till you've ported everything over to your client server. And that's when you take care of the S3 issues. But your S1 and your S2, those are the issues that you kind of need to sit down with your client and create an acceptance metric, saying that when I will migrate the site over to your server, there will be 0 S1 issues. There might be a couple of S2 issues, but I'll take care of them after migration. And there will be a lot of S3 issues, cosmetic issues, but I will take care of them before the complimentary support period gets over. This way, a big benefit that you'll get out of that is that the client's expectations will be set in terms of what they can expect. I have seen clients who don't pay their developer because of a minor cosmetic issue, which could have easily been resolved once the site was ported over to the client server, right? So to avoid this whole thing of not getting paid because the client is looking for perfection in their work, I usually recommend this pragmatic approach where you create an acceptance metric with the client beforehand, or just after you've started the project, or maybe during the client onboarding phase, so that the expectations are set. The client knows what to expect at the end of milestone 3 or the end of milestone 4. I have seen that, not just in this, but even in our personal lives, 99% of the problems are caused because of two things. Number one, a misalignment of expectations. And number two is lack of or improper communication. If you set the client's expectations such at the start of the project, so he knows what the journey is going to be like, that he knows or she knows that this is going to be a messy journey, that she knows that there will be a lot of times when she will have to come back to you with feedback, that she will have to tell you what to do, that they will have to be involved in the whole process. That'll just kind of set you up for success, because now the client knows what to expect during this journey. So make sure you talk about these things upfront when you're onboarding the project, right? So just to do a quick recap, start off with a functional spec. Make sure your client has signed the functional spec, so there's a blueprint of what you're going to create, number one. Number two, see if you can do wireframes based off that functional spec. For the first time, the client will see everything laid out visually, right? Number three, take those wireframes and convert them into prototypes. Again, we are in a visual field. When they will see those prototypes for the first time, they will see the flow of the project. Again, with all three of these, you will ring fence the scope of the project, right? We know 99% of the times issues happen because of scope creep. Now that you have these three things out of the equation, number four is keep a change management document, keep a change management protocol, right? And within that change management protocol, have three buckets: in scope, out of scope, negotiable. Very simple. Will avoid a lot of headache, right? You have the change management document in place. Upfront, when you start the project, have an acceptance metric with the client. Divide all the bugs into S1, S2, S3, which is severity 1, severity 2, severity 3. Tell the client, I will make sure before I migrate everything to your server, there will be no S1 bugs. Maybe a couple of S2 bugs, but I will clean them up right after migration. And there will be S3 bugs, but that's normal. And I will make sure that those S3 bugs are cleaned up too before the complimentary support period is over. And here's the kicker. The last thing which you have to tell your client, like I said, is that a website is a living, breathing thing. It's like a human being, it's like an animal, right? If you have a pet at home, there's ongoing recurring costs that you incur for having the pet. You need to take your dog for vaccinations, you gotta buy dog food, you gotta take them for grooming, right? So website is not a one and done deal. A website is a living, breathing thing. It needs a server space, hosting. It needs, domain name. Maybe there's payment gateways that you have that where you need to pay them on a monthly basis. And you need maintenance. Websites go down. It's not the developer's fault. It is unreasonable to expect a developer to develop a website that will function as it should over years. It's usually that's not the case. Even after your website goes live, every month there might be some issue which comes up, some API that needs to get updated, some CSS issue which has happened not because of the developer's fault but because of some server setting, something which goes wrong. And if you go to the developer and say, hey, you gotta fix this for free because I have paid you and I expect a perfect site, that's unreasonable. No developer is going to do that. So sign on for a maintenance package. Most developers have ongoing maintenance. Sign up for that. See, at the end of the day, your developer is a human being and a website is not a product. It's a service. And a developer is a human being. He has to pay bills. He has to put food on the table. So if you're not going to be his best client, someone else will. So to make sure you continue to be your web developer's best client, make sure you're reasonable, make sure you pay him on time, make sure you sign a maintenance contract. And if you are a web developer, make sure you followed all the steps that I told earlier, and also make sure that your client signs a maintenance contract so you can continue to service the client and the relationship can be an ongoing one as opposed to a one-night stand where both of you are trying to exploit and get the most possible out of it. That doesn't bode well, that doesn't augur well for a relationship, for a business relationship. What you want is a relationship over years where your client makes money out of the app, makes money out of the website, and you two get paid, and both of you are in a win-win situation. I hope this lecture has helped you out. If you have any questions, drop me a mail. We've been in this business for the last 15 years. These are my contact details. And if you have a project, give me a shout. I would love to hear you out. Thank you so much. If you like what I've said, press like. If you want to subscribe to our channel, press subscribe. And if you want to share it, please share it. Thank you so much. Have a blessed week. There's a heat wave going on in Chicago right now. So if you're in the Chicagoland area, stay safe, stay cool, and enjoy the rest of the summer. Thank you so much. I'm logging out.